Talking Suns Clippers from Saturday. Oh, this one wasn't pretty. Unless, of course, you're a Suns fan. And then it was raindrops and unicorns. Suns led wire to wire, getting the win and the seemingly commanding 3-1 series lead. Though never count the Clippers out this postseason. Unicorns are beautiful. Clippers still without Kawhi, who isn't even expected to travel to Phoenix for Game 5 tonight, much less suit up. So, Brandon, start with you. Is it safe to say this series is over?
Yeah, it's over, Jenna. And while we're starting with me, let's go back to my picks. I picked the Clippers to make it out of the West and the Nets to make it out of the East, but I hedged my bet. Halfway through the year, I hedged my bet, guys. I said the Suns are a real team. And on this show, you and Chris, everybody said, we can't talk about the Suns on this team. So it doesn't matter if it's over. For me personally, I still will be fine because the Suns are in good position, all right? So I just want to put that out there first. But it's too much for Paul George. Now, if we had Kawhi Leonard, if he was playing, then they would probably win this series when you look at how competitive these games have been. Now, the Suns have been in total control. These games have been closer than what the this 3-1 series lead looks like. Even a couple nights ago, there was 4 times in the fourth quarter where they were within 1 point, but they just didn't have enough to overcome just Paul George. CP3, Ayton, and also Booker. Those 3 guys combined for damn near 70 points. So it's just too much for those guys without Kawhi Leonard. They don't have enough in the tank, Nick. So when you look at this moving forward, I see this as a game where Chris Paul potentially makes a statement. This is a guy who hasn't been able to get over the hump in the playoffs, and now you're in an elimination game, you're in a closeout game. Now you're probably going to go out there and drop 35, 40 points and make that statement because he's a guy that can easily turn it on offensively when he wants to.
And going back home to Phoenix, of course, will help. That crowd's been amazing. And I understand folks are going to say, well, listen, it's an unfair fight. The Clippers don't have Kawhi. Well, the Suns didn't have Chris Paul for the first 2 games, and they haven't really had him the last 2 games. I don't know if it's getting over the rust, getting over the COVID protocols, what it is, but the 2 worst playoff games Chris Paul has had this year, aside from the one where he hurt his shoulder, are these 2 games right now, and the Suns still have the 3-1 series lead. And so I do think the series is over. I also think that a quiet subplot of the Western Conference playoffs has been the regular season might just matter again. Because one of the reasons why the Clippers are in the position they're in? Because they are totally and without question out of gas. Because their road to the conference finals was an arduous, damn near impossible one. You're the 4 seed. You take on a team with a top 3 player in basketball in Luka in round 1. They take you to the brink. Then you get Utah in round 2, which while once you made adjustments, you took care of them easily. But those first 2 games in Utah, where Utah had been the best home team in basketball all year, you're down 0-2, and now all of a sudden you're in a spot where, as I talked about last week, it's just going to continue. You're now playing your 17th game in 34 days, then your 18th game in 36 days, and eventually you look like the Clippers looked in that fourth quarter. Wilds, I think it's 10. I think it was 10 shots the Clippers had in the fourth to tie or take the lead and went 0 for 10. It wasn't just Paul George going 5 for 20. He was 1 for 7 in the fourth. It was the Clippers as a whole being spent because the Suns were there for the taking. Booker wasn't playing great. Chris Paul wasn't good in the fourth quarter. All they could rely on seemingly was Ayton, and their offense isn't really built around dumping the ball to him down the low post and having him do work. He's more lobs and putbacks. And so the Clippers could have tied this series, and they didn't have enough left in the tank. So, listen, I think the Suns are an excellent team. I said before the playoffs began, I thought they were the 2nd best team in the West. I thought the Lakers would beat them. I was obviously wrong. But I don't think the Clippers have enough in the tank to win 3 consecutive games over a team as good as the Suns are.
So you're talking a lot about them being physically spent. I think there's an emotional sort of like out of gas too. I think they're emotionally spent too, considering they had to always win on the road in Dallas, and then even the monster comeback against the Jazz. I just felt like it took a lot out of them. And if they lose tonight, oddly, it feels like, hey, we did pretty well. We beat the Mavs, we beat the Jazz, but like, oh, you didn't. But those were such an arduous climb. I think there's a feeling of almost accomplishment, and it's just like an emotional expenditure that hurts them. But Nick, I want to throw it back to you here. 2 legacies on the line tonight. If Chris Paul goes to the finals, this will be another great chapter in his legacy, and he can finally get over the hump. I think this is also a low-key Paul George legacy game, where it's been sort of up and down. I was like, he played well. And it's like, yeah, shake the way off Pete, you know, moniker, throw that in the garbage. Then the other day it was terrible, but the whole game was terrible, so we'll maybe give him a pass on that. I would like to see him go out, if the Clippers are going to lose, in just a blaze of glory. I don't know if it's going to happen, and I don't know if it's going to insulate you to any criticism, considering we just saw KD score 48 points and lose the game by a toenail and still get ripped. But either way, I think Paul George should just play confidently. It's a storyline that I'm just done with, that Paul George doesn't show up in the playoffs. I'm rooting for Chris Paul to make it to the finals, but I find myself oddly really pulling for for Paul George. I just want to see him play well and perform at this level of playoff basketball. I don't know why necessarily. I don't love Paul George, but it's a storyline. I feel like he's being treated unfairly, and I want to see him shake it. Do you feel that in your gut?
I think for the most part he shed it. I think for the most part he shed it when Kawhi went out and they won those back-to-back games against Utah. I think when that happened, people were like, okay. Like particularly that game 5 in Utah, people were like, wow. And then game 6, obviously, they come back from 25 down. Now, that was more Terrence Mann and Reggie Jackson. But this series, listen, Paul George shooting 35.5% this series. It's been rough for him. He's getting to the free throw line. He's getting rebounds. He's playing a ton of minutes, but his efficiency hasn't been there. But Brandon, I want to switch it back. And I agree with you, of course, for Chris Paul. He's the most decorated player in league history to never make a finals. Most All-Stars, most All-NBAs, and that's going to go away in the next either 12 or 36 hours. But I want to talk about the Suns as a whole, because I do think this playoffs is crystallizing for us something that we had not been saying all year. I want to go back to your Nets.
Right.
What you were saying about the Nets all year, and you weren't wrong on, was they were the only team in the league with a big 3. And I am not comparing KD, Harden, Kyrie to Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton. But Ayton, this playoffs, is averaging 16 and 11 on 70%. Just for context, no player in league history in this many playoff games has averaged 15 points on better than 62%. 70% in this many playoff games, this many points, is totally off the board, unprecedented. And the fact that you can have a game like Game 4, where Chris Paul's not efficient, where Devin Booker clearly is not totally right, I think the mask was really bothering him, and DeAndre Ayton can damn near give you 20 and 20 with a handful of blocks, speaks to how malleable and how dangerous this Suns team is, because they all of a sudden have a budding big 3 that I at least didn't see coming heading into the year.
Right, and when we talk about big 3, you got to look at consistency. That's what you expect. Like, we expect James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant to perform at a high level every single night. So if you want to be considered a part of the big 3, even a part of the big 2, that means you can't take a night off. And when you look at these 3, talking about the Suns, Ayton, Booker, and CP3, throughout these playoffs, they stood up, and even the double down on Ayton, like the points, the rebounds, and the percentage. Like, we haven't seen that since 2012 with Dwight Howard. This dude is playing lights out, and those are the only 2 to do it at that level. And you go back into history, Mr. Archivist and the show historian. Like, this is a big deal, and that all starts with CP3. We saw that in the last block. We played the video of Ayton talking about CP3 is the best thing that happened for me. But if you go back to the first series with the Lakers, after that series, Bridges spoke and he said,
That's right.
man, I don't like how he talks to me, but at the end of the day, he is the reason why I'm playing the way I'm playing, and he's pushing me, and I have to respect it. You said it, man. It's something about this generation at CP3. I don't know if it's because they look at him as like an elder in the locker room, where it's almost like, don't disrespect your elder, I gotta listen, but he is getting through to these guys 100%.
By the way, when Bridges said that, he had Ayton on his T-shirt, so it's just an effort to confuse everything. Time to hand out Knicks NBA medals. Devin Booker dropped 20.